begin in 3 minutes.
I hope you are all ready, for the stream is starting soon. 2 minutes. In 1 minute, the stream will begin.
The stream will begin in 3, 2, 1.
Thingies happen. Aha. Take that, stupid. Okie dokie. Yeah, take that. Hello. Welcome everyone who is watching in post. Not sure if anyone is watching right now. Probably not. But we're back at Chapter 8 of Mask of the Plague Doctor. Here to fix the mistakes that happened in the last stream. Not even going to talk about it. Mask of the Plague Doctor by Peter Parrish. Chapter 8. Roots. Alice's lantern is passed into your hands as the three of you descend the stone stairs in single file. Gloom nibbles at the fringes of the candlelight as you make cautious progress, mindful of the uneven steps beneath your feet. As you travel farther down, your elbows and shoulders begin to graze against the encroaching surfaces of hewn walls. One section is so narrow that it becomes necessary to turn your entire body sideways in order to fit through. The air smells different here, removed from the ailing streets and lingering miasmas of the tannery. It has a damp, earthen aroma, like the topsoil of tilled fields after a rainy day. You feel moisture on the walls, and your light picks out grooves on their surface. formed over countless seasons by droplets of water. As you descend farther, you wonder how much labor went into the construction of the steps beneath the soles of your boots. Did long-forgotten townsfolk of Thornback Hollow devote their lives and the lives of their descendants to cleaving through earth and solid rock? Your mind wanders as the staggered sounds of careful footsteps ring in triplicate. In the flickering illumination, you begin to see the shifting outlines of long-eared creatures. Your thoughts turn to the rabbits under the stewardship of Richard Cogg, dwelling beneath the mayor's mansion in their own sprawling, tangled warren. The anticipated next step never comes, and your foot finds thin air. For a gut-dragging second, it seems as if momentum may carry you over, until a steadying hand grasps your upper arm. "Careful there," Ayoko says. "I don't want to be dragging your carcass back up these steps in the pitch black." You regain your balance and breathe out a word of thanks. The lantern sways at its hinge, scattering fitful points of light across your surroundings, mirroring the adrenaline flutters in your heart. As your nerves calm, you steady your light source and aim it ahead. The absent steps has half crumbled away. With care, you stretch your leg to the one beyond. To your relief, it appears that the passageway before you is beginning to widen. The walls no longer threaten to pin your arms to your sides, and in the glow from the lantern you can see that a final sequence of steps leads to a tall opening, carved or eroded from an approximation of an archway. I distract myself with thoughts of plundering underground treasures. This is me. This is the kind of person that I am. You know, whenever I go somewhere, I'm always wondering if there's anything useful that I could find and just, pick up that nobody would miss. But the other things I wouldn't really care about. I'll distract myself with thoughts of plundering underground treasures. But you aid your colleagues down the last portions of the staircase, handing the lantern back to Alice as she alights on the level portion of rock beneath the archway. As the echoes of your footfalls cease, you are struck by the absolute silence of your surroundings. Not a hint of wind, no voices, no wildlife. The stillness is insistent, almost aggressive in its totality. You softly clear your throat, seeking reassurance that sound has not yet deserted this place. Holding the lantern before her, Alice steps through the opening. You hear an intake of breath from the other side. The chamber in which she stands in is many times wider than the stairs you just descended, and stretches up so high that the candle glow cannot hope to chase away the gloom. Lining each side of this underground hall, and stacked as far as you are able to see, are rows of stone sarcophagi. "A mausoleum," Alice whispers, her voice tinged with awe. "It's magnificent." "It's eerie," Ioko remarks, folding his arms and peering up toward the space where the ceiling must hide. You stay close to Alice, using the light from her lantern to examine the worn inscriptions along the edges of the caskets as you walk their length. Time and damp have eaten away at the intricate detailing, but you're able to make out designs in the shapes of twisting roots, overlaid carvings of scattered leaves, and the bold outlines of grand floral patterns. Decorative crests, their heraldry lost to the ages, adorn the crafted surfaces. "Jack the Ripper?" Alice says, plunging your studies back into the darkness as she directs the illumination across to the other side of the chamber. Does this look to you like the sarcophagus was recently disturbed? The light flickers across the scrapings and debris of a broken seal. A heavy lid lies slightly askew. You advance with care, following the yellow radiance of the lantern. The smell worms its way beneath your mask, threading the aroma of decomposition into both nostrils. At your side, you hear Alice swallow back some bile, her closed fist held against the mouth of her mask. Gathering your resolve, you lean closer over the casket. The lid rests uneasy, and through the sliver of revealed space, you think you can see strands of human hair. We should close this and seal any pestilence within. The corpse looks fresh. We shall learn how they died. Give me space to use now. Oh, that's what everything. Give this. I go take a look at this body now. I think I want to look. I don't know if they'll feel comfortable. So that corpse looks fresh. We should learn how they died. You volunteering? Ayoko asks, sounding dubious. Just help me budge this lid, you reply. Between the three of you, you're able to widen the gap far enough for your hands and forearms to fit inside the sarcophagus. Placing the lantern on the lip of the open casket, you take a closer look at the body. Though your talent for medicine is ample, the poor source of light and limited space within which to work prove to be significant obstacles. You are able to ascertain that the body is in a relatively early state of decomposition, but little else. Well, Ayoko asks. This person died within the last week or two, you say. Seems likely they were one of the unfortunate bastards being smuggled out of here. I suppose it could be one of the smugglers themselves, but I can't say for sure. Let's hope they were not victims to the walking death, Alice says. The candle begins to sputter. The candle flame inside the lantern has burned almost to the end of its wick. It flickers and spits, throwing strange shadows across the stacked rows of sarcophagi that surround you. As Alice hurries to produce and light a replacement, your mind lingers on the prospect of being trapped in silence and darkness, lost and forgotten beneath the streets of Thornback Hollow, entombed with the same finality as the hidden bones that surround you. A new candle, burning strong and bright, pushes those feelings back to the edges of your mind. You glance around at your colleagues, wondering what anxieties burrow inside their respective thoughts. We should keep searching, Ayoko says. I'm doubtful the tunnels end here. Here then, says Alice, handing him the lantern. Your turn to be the light bearer. Behind you lies the entrance to the mausoleum. Ahead, one wide, straight corridor, holding the lantern before him. Ayoko takes the only path available, heading deeper into the chamber. As he walks on, you see him stumble, his foot catching against something on the ground. He crouches, passing the candlelight over a small pile of rock. Ayoko moves the lantern with care, passing it over and along a trail of stones ever increasing in size. As he stands, the light travels with him, flickering up over a gouged space where a portion of the chamber's back wall once stood. Roots. Each exploratory strand the size of a thick branch, have pierced and spilled their way inside. They cling and wind, reaching to the mausoleum like a deity of death, seeking to claim what is theirs. Alice steps forward, running her hand over one of the encroaching tendrils. Incredible, she says. Look here, Ayoko says, standing by the doorway-sized hole left by the roots. You move closer to see what your colleague has uncovered and find yourself looking at a symbol scratched out in white. An imperfect circle with a crude arrow, pointing straight through the rift in the wall. Not too many ways to interpret that, you say. Ioko scoffs. Seems some of the guides actually did their jobs, he says. Rather than. His voice trails off as he turns to look at the casket you examined moments earlier. Huh. Yeah. At least they had a burial of sorts. Might be more than we received down here. Yeah, that's the one I'm going to choose. You two trying to outdo yourselves with misery again? Alice remarks. She gestures up at the roots, wending their way toward an unseen ceiling. Look around you. These roots are astonishing. Ioko shrugs. It's like a tree, but larger. Not sure how that helps us stay alive. She groans in response and gives him a tap on the back. Go on, surgeon of sorrow. Grumbling to himself, Ioko holds up the light and squeezes past the dense mass of roots, finding a human-sized opening through which to slip. As the glow from the lantern dims, you hear him call out from beyond the contortion of plant matter. There's a way through. Come on. You keep a sure footing as you try to follow your colleague's path. The roots are firm in structure, but slick with damp, making it safer to plant your boots and get in the gaps between. Sorry. Against the drier rock surfaces. You advance with caution, using what few patches of illumination creep through from Ioko's side, mindful that a misstep could result in a twisted ankle, or worse. Behind, you hear Alice making similarly careful progress. At times, she's holding her breath. Ioko's hand reaches out to you, helping to haul you over the last gnarled hurdle. In return, you offer Alice your assistance and pull her free of the chasm. By the light of the lantern, you're able to see the three of you now stand in a natural cave, enlarged by the eroding roots that curve and twist along every surface. Nooks and crevices persist along the tunnel's length, but short of turning back, there is only one clear direction of travel open to you. Advance down the tunnel. Together you pick your way along the cave passage, following the slope downward into the dark. Your eyes and limbs feel weary, and you realize that in this subterranean space, you have already begun to lose track of time. Ahead of you, Ioko pauses and motions for you all to stoop. You trace your fingers along the rocks above your head, as if trying to push the narrowing tunnel away. A flash of sweat prickles your skin. Beneath your mask, your cheeks are flush. Strange sounds reach your ear, and you recognize them as your own rapid breathing. Something unseen squeezes your chest. Aware of the rising signs of panic, you direct all the composure you can muster to controlling your breath. The underground air fills your lungs, pushing back against invisible constriction. You reach to tip your mask upward, allowing the cooler temperatures to touch your face. I'm anxious too. Alice's voice takes you by surprise. As an unawareness of your surroundings returns, you see the outline of Ioko's back, framed by the lantern glow, much farther down the tunnel. For the past few seconds, you've been locked in place. A reassuring hand rubs your shoulder. You know, although this is what I want to do, this is probably what I would actually do. Self-deprecation is kind of what I do. I make a self-deprecating comment. Ba-doop. Typical, you scoff. I'm fine being surrounded by sickness, but put me as far below the plague-ridden town as possible and I start shaking. Alice gives your shoulder a parting pat. That's normal. It happens to all physicians when we get too far or away from an unsolvable disease. You chuckle, appreciating this brief respite from your fears. With a deep inhale, you start to move forward once again. Listen, Ayako calls back. You turn your head, but hear only the receding thump of agitated blood. It sounds like water, Alice says. Are we beneath to the river? The rush in your ears changes in tone. Now the sound of water is unmistakable. Head toward the water. Much to your relief, the tunnel starts to widen. The entrapping walls fall farther away, and the three of you emerge from the passageway into a vast natural cavern. As Ayoko moves the lantern in a slow arc, you see the source of the sound. A steady stream of water cascades from above, tumbling over shelves and ledges of rock from some unreachable opening. The water cuts across the path ahead of you, pulling in the uneven trenches and troghs, then cascading over the leftward edge into an embracing emptiness beyond your sight. Farther ahead, you spy a patch of level terrain and a streak of dark color. Keeping yourselves tight against the secure right-hand wall, you work your way around the ledge toward the flattened shelf. Water drips on you from unseen stalactites, and the spray from the miniature waterfall dusts your robes. The stream itself is relatively shallow, flowing halfway up to the opening of your boots as you wade across. As light from the lantern swings over the rippling surface, you see it reflect off shimmering minerals being carried along by the current. A short incline sweeps upward from the bed of the stream, leading to the wider shelf of rock beyond. You feel the weight of your fatigued legs as you follow Ayoko up the slope, dislodging pebbles and other small pieces of stone as you drag yourself on. Looks like a camp, Ayoko says, pointing. You see fraying pieces of burlap fabric stretched over a natural alcove in the rock face. In front, you see a circle of stones containing the charred ashes of a long dead fire. To the side of what a generous observer might call the entrance is another symbol, carved in the same white hue as before. It denotes a crude dwelling. Next to it, you see the shape of a fish. Oh, if I don't answer, it might be because I passed out. Hi, Crack. Don't die from drunky drunks. You know, that's bad. Alcohol overdose is bad. You don't want to overdose from alcohol. It's bad. Fucking got 8 beers and 6 shots. What did you drink for the 6 shots? Should have stopped at 3. Ugh. Calling it a camp seems a bit of a stretch, you remark. More than I expected down here, Alice says, stepping off the slope and inspecting her mineral-streaked boots. I say we take advantage. The hour must be late. How can you tell? You ask. It's dark, isn't it? You consider rolling your eyes, but realized she never see it. We should get the fire going, or are we sure this spot is safe? The markings suggest there might be fish around here. Had to walk 4 kilometers or 2.5 miles to get home. It's almost 2 a.m. Jesus. Well, I'm glad you made it home safe. Are you home? Are you home right now, Crack? You better be home and okay. The markings suggest there might be some fish around here. But we trusting cave scribblings now, are we? Alice says, sounding dubious. How do we know these fish are even safe to eat? Nobody will force you to have them, Ayoko says. It's worth a look, at least. I presume that means somebody is going fishing, Alice replies. That's the shots that got me. Yeah, I'm home. Good. And I officially have no crushes. Like soda? Uh, Alco holds up the lantern. In the light, you can see he's staring out into the cavern. Saw some inhospitable places serving with the crown. Never had to survive in a cave, though. This should be novel. Hmm, I think he'll be fine fishing on his own. He got this. I wish him luck, but I'm staying here with Alice. But oh, uh, okay. I'll try to keep it wholesome. Your messages show right here. Got any more candles? You ask Alice. Not that I'm averse to sitting in the dark, but several, she replies, producing another from a bulging pouch. I wasn't sure how long we'd be down here. Aoko brings the lantern closer so she can use it to transfer the flame. With the gesture that with that sorry, with that gesture complete, he says a brief farewell and steps back onto the shallow slope. You watch the glow from the lantern get swallowed up by the cavern as he moves out of sight. Your own candle dances and flutters as Alice wedges it between the trio of stones above the alcove entrance. There, she says, taking a seat with her back to the cave wall. Now we can see our delightful surroundings. You laugh and try to make yourself comfortable alongside her. Not easy with the jagged surface of the wall nudging your back. For a time, you sit in silence, looking at the charred remains of the campfire, wondering how many people last sat around it and how many are still alive. I just realized, Alice muses. I've missed that sound. The stream? You ask, the rush and flow of its current still audible at this distance. Ambleridge, the village where I grew up, had a river that cut through it. Our home was close to the bank. I could always hear it at night. That sound, it meant, I don't know, that the world was still in motion somehow. It was comforting. Does that make sense? As much as anything, you reply. I don't think I've heard you talk about your past, your family. Not much to tell. My parents are dead. I have a brother somewhere, I think. He left when I was still young. She sighs. Perhaps the stream will help me sleep for once. You've not been sleeping? An unease grips your gut. Alice lifts her mask. In the poor light of the cavern, her eyes look even more sunken. You know what? I will get some sleep. It might be a bad idea if I stayed up any longer. Probably. Go get some sleep, dude. Alice sighed. Don't give me that tone. It's just too many late nights or early mornings, she says. But I do need to ask something of you, Jack the Ripper. If I were to catch the walking death, I want you to promise me that you'd give me every chance to test a cure. Every chance, Jack the Ripper. Even using my own body if it comes to that. I'll submit to a quarantine, but do not prevent me from working. Her gaze is on you, committed and stern. I promise, Alice, I'd give you every opportunity to find a cure. How long have you been concealing this? I can't give you that kind of guarantee. Obviously, she's been concealing this for a while. I promise, Alice. I'd give you every opportunity to find a cure. You see her smile with a relief at your response. Thank you, Jack the Ripper. I knew I could trust you with this. She pauses, looking out into the expanse of the cavern. Being out here, away from the university, it's frightening, but also liberating. Almost sounds as if you're glad to have left, you reply. Don't misunderstand me, she says. The teaching I received was sometimes exceptional, and the books. I'd never have seen so many medical tomes in one library. But many of the physicians and surgeons were old, slow to change. They weren't open to trying new techniques, new observations. It could be so. Alice moves her hands in the air, searching for the term. Stifling! You're speaking from personal experience. I can tell. Remnants of her frustration are obvious, even in the gloom. Have you heard of the peat adder? She asks. The name comes from the peat bogs where they tend to dwell. It has quite a venomous bite. Vaguely. Bites usually require amputation, if I recall. And that's what I thought. That's what I was taught, too, Alice says. You catch some resentment in her tone. But it's not correct. I'd read some literature. Physic of the Marshlands. It contained a wonderful chapter about the properties of sphagnum moss. Properties of sphagnum moss, including a treatment for peat adder bites. You notice that your colleague is rolling up the sleeve of her robe as she continues to speak. When I introduced this idea to the great and wise teachers of my university, they turned me away. Wouldn't even let me show them the book. As far as they were concerned, amputation was the only solution. Well, does this look amputated to you? Alice pushes her now bare forearm toward you, holding it in the dim candlelight. You see a patch of rough skin dotted with darkened red welts. As you look closer, you can make out the scarred puncture marks. You were bitten by a peat adder? You ask. Let myself be bitten, she replies, sounding proud. It was the only way to prove to those dusty frauds that I knew what I was doing. The 2 days of fever were worth the looks on their faces. After that, did they adopt your treatment? Alice laughs. No. They forbade me to leave the university grounds for 2 months and had me doing menial tasks until I learned my lesson. She reaches out with her hand, and you feel her fingertips touching the edges of your mask. That's why finding someone who allows me to be myself has felt so important. Uh-oh. I'm not trying to... So this is like a fucking love decision or something? Uh, I don't. I just don't. Like, I want to say these things, but around here, saying nice things can get you in trouble. So I'm gonna have to. uh. I don't want to have to do that all over again. I don't want to say this. I don't know which is better. I'm not good in these situations. I need help. I'm gonna go with this one. This isn't what I want, Alice. I'm sorry. Boop. Oh, she says, moving herself farther away. Sorry, There's no need for you to apologize, you reply. Please don't take it too hard. Still, I was foolish to presume, she says, covering her face with her mask once more. You try to reassure her that you do not consider her advance foolish, hoping to avoid an awkward silence. You attempt to keep conversation flowing. Alice indulges you, but her replies feel detached for the moment, as if distracted by other thoughts. Ah. With a hoarse greeting, Ielko announces his return. He holds up a small bundle of brittle roots. Found these on my travels, he says, scattering them over the remains of the old fire. Should burn if we're persistent. Setting the lantern down, he unhooks a pouch from his belt. Caught these two over in the stream. You look inside the bag. 3 diminutive fish lie against one another. You two get up to anything interesting? He asks. Nothing much, Alice deadpans. All right, then let's get a proper fire started. Take respite around the fire. The warmth of the fire soothes your outstretched palms. As Ielko pulls some salted meat from your remaining supplies, Alice tosses another pair of roots into the blaze. They crackle and spit, sending a thin trail of smoke toward the cavern's hidden heights. You take a swig from a shared flask of water and stare at the wriggling flames, pondering the source of the unseen flow of air that animates their movements. You ask me, sleeping here would be a risk, Ielko says between chews. What if we're on top of the plague source? We'd be exposed for hours. He pauses, then points to the fire. Could be in these roots. Then we'd be inhaling it all night. I think we all appreciate the danger in coming down here, Alice replies. But we all need to rest, and this spot has shelter of a sort. She gestures at the flames and at the food in Ielko's hand. A warmth, sustenance, and warmth. Sustenance. We can't reject all that on the mere suspicion of contagion. Alice is right, you say, pushing a hand underneath your mask to rub some drowsiness from your eye. It would be folly to push onward while exhausted. Ielko shrugs, either convinced by your arguments or too tired to offer any further debate on the matter. You find your gaze drawn to the elongated shadows cast by the strong blaze, creeping and subsiding across the surface of the rock like an ethereal tide. I see more shadow than light. I see more light than shadow. I feel the heat of the flames. I feel the chill of the cavern. You know, I'm the kind of person who likes a nice cold breeze when I have a thin blanket on me. I would always focus on the cold, and it feels really nice. But it's not like a negative thing like I feel this is trying to portray. But this is probably what I would be noticing the more. Just because I just like the contrast between cold and warmth, and I don't like warmth much. So feeling a little chill while still just a little warmed up is a nice feeling to me. So I feel the chill of the cavern. But the sound of Alice's clapped palms jolt you back to the moment. Enough dreariness and woe. I'm tired of reflecting on how hopeless our situation feels, she says. Got a panacea for what ails us? Ielko asks, finishing the last morsel of meat and licking the salt from his fingers. You're mocking me, but I do have a distraction in mind. And since you're so eager, you can go first. What's your finest medical accomplishment? Ioko groans as he takes the flask from your hands. Come on, old man, I know you're proud of something. Guess that's so, he admits, taking a drink and setting the container beside him. Right. Well, second year at the Crown's behest. He adds a sarcastic royal embellishment with his wrist. Poor lad got brought to the tent with an arrowhead in his cheek, pierced right through beneath their right eye. Now I'm barely a surgeon at this time. I think this bastard is finished, but since he's dead either way, I decide to use the Bradmore method. Which is? You ask, leaning forward. I was getting to it. You use these twigs of elder pith, wrapped in linen and dipped in honey. Ioko tries to demonstrate the size with his fingers. If you can get them in, they keep the wound open, enlarge it. Then you can reach in with some narrow tongs and he makes a popping sound with his mouth. Since you're telling this story, I presume he lived? Says Alice. He did. Ioko nods. Wine and vinegar kept the infection in way. It was painful, ugly, and he had a bloody big scar to show his husband. He sits back. My finest moment without doubt. What about you, Alice? You ask. Without hesitation, she replies. Surviving university with my sanity intact. That's all you're going to say? Ioko says after enough silence has passed. And here I was pouring out my life story. He turns his head toward you. Suppose that makes it your turn, Jack the Ripper. You know just which story to tell. It practically defined your approach to medicine. Let's see. I solved the mystery of the brown urine epidemic in Hornsheen. I saved the life of a woman by putting a whole hole in her skull. I am merely a conduit for greater powers. My achievements belong to the deities. Convincing the Archdeacon of Yeltonshire to buy a crate of useless straw. Nice. Scaring the son of Baroness Pompo into taking his medicine. The time I stitched my own wounds after besting a duo in a street fight. This would probably be me, my character, because my background is I used to bodyguard for an apothecary, or I think, yeah, and so I learned medicine through that person. So it would make sense to have started my shit when I was in a brawl. So, because I'm a fighter, yo. The time I stitched my own wounds after besting a duo in a street fight. That's the one I'm going with. Ba-doop. I just finished doling out medicine for a pretty standard case of pombox, heading back to the residence where I was staying, when I bumped into a couple of lads. Or, more like they were waiting in a side alley for the chance to bump into the next person who looked like they might be carrying a purse. You pause to stretch your back, feeling a soft pop somewhere deep. Perhaps I look like an easy target in this mask and robe. Who knows? You definitely do not, Ayoko says. That's what they learned too, you reply, chuckling as you recall the fight. Useless bastards only had one knife between them, but they managed to draw some blood. Didn't notice in the moment. I was busy relieving them of their own. Almost sounds like you enjoyed that, Alice remarks. Perhaps a little. So how did it end? Ayoko asks. With them limping back into their hole and me trying to sew back part of my ear using some barely reflective glass as a mirror. You turn your head, presenting the tattered lobe to your audience. As you can see, I did a presentable job. You consider this your finest achievement? I do. Well, not the ear itself. Any drunken barber surgeon could manage that. Surviving the fight, not my first, nor my last, but it was a taste of what I'd have to endure. Dispensing medicine on the road. I took that to heart. You sit back, your tale complete. Retelling it has stirred some old memories, and you feel more confident in your abilities. It is as if describing your talents out loud has reaffirmed your skill. Ioko yawns and pokes at the remains of the fire with his boot. While you were talking, the blaze has diminished, allowing the gloomy confines of the cavern to once again shrink around you all. There's only room for two in that alcove, he says. Which one of us sleeps outside by the fire? I'll take that spot, you say. You two go ahead. Find sleep beneath the earth. The sound of the stream winds its way through your head, submerging your thoughts beneath its babbling surface. You find yourself following its path, cascading down the cavern walls, across the traveled path. Over the edge, spilling, tumbling down. Too late to turn back or grab hold of anything of substance, you fall all away into the void. Away into the blank, consuming emptiness. The expected rush of fear does not come. Instead, you find yourself floating down with almost weightless ease. A feeling of relaxation creeping up from the tips of your toes. Light streams in from sources you cannot see, rolling back the shadows on the cliff walls. Curious plants sprout from the rock face, colorful mosses and vines patterning the surface beneath the waterfall. With a minimal effort, you're able to reposition your body and drift closer to the spread of unusual flora. A sprinkle of mist from the tumbling water refreshes your cheeks as you reach out a hand, allowing the soft texture of petals to brush against your fingertips. You awake with dank moisture on your face, residual calm of your dream vanishing with the ache in your limbs. Time to get up. You stretch, trying to squeeze some of the stiffness out of your arms and legs. A rogue muscle tugs in the back of your neck, making you wince. Morning! Alice's voice catches you unaware. Being careful not to aggravate the knot in your neck any further, you look around for your colleague. She's standing a short distance away, rummaging in a small bag. Get any sleep? You ask. A little, she nods. In between nudging Ioko when his sleep chatter got too loud. You? Weird dream, you started to say. You and everybody else who's ever slept. Unless it gave you the cure to the walking death. No, it was mostly plants and waterfalls. Then I don't think it's relevant. She concludes her search, pulling out the fox mask. You watch as she slips it over her face, adjusting how it sits. I'm going to rouse our fellow traveler. We shouldn't spend too much more time here. Gather your possessions. The three of you sit around the cold ashes of the fire, masks tilted to allow the consumption of stale bread. You look around, counting the surfaces and materials that would be softer than the chunks of rigid dough battling your overworked jaw. Dough? Doff? How do you say that? Rigid doff? I don't know. The count reaches 3 before Ioko's voice disrupts your idle game. Wonder how it looks, he says, face lit from below by Alice's lantern. Up there. I imagine it's only getting worse. Forget about them. We need to focus on what happens to us down there. Perhaps the plague will stagnate, burn itself out. I've seen it happen before. I don't know, but I feel desperately sorry for those living through this. I don't know. It's one of these two that I would probably choose. You know, let's go with a hopeful one. Perhaps the plague will stagnate, burn itself out. I've seen it happen before. Oh, sorry. But should have done the thingy. Ayoko's laugh lacks any trace of joy. Perhaps, he says. The illumination vanishes from Ayoko's face, and Alice stands and pulls the lantern up with her. I may still be waking up, but is it getting lighter in here? She asks, pointing outward at the cavern's main chamber. You lift off your mask for a better view, trying to discern whether the blurred crags and outlines of ledges are real or aspects of your imagination. Pull the lantern out, you suggest. Alice extinguishes the flame rather than condemning you to the darkness of the previous night. It leaves the cavern a pale shade of gray. Searching for the source, you realize that the distant opening through which water spills into the caves is now casting a dim morning glow. New pathways unseen in the restricted bubble of the lantern's light now reveal themselves. One in particular catches your eye, curling its way down toward a deep cleft in the wall. Think that's our way onward? Alice asks, her eyes spying the very same opening. If it is, I'm sure those who've trodden these paths before us will mark it, Ayoko says, joining the two of you in peering into the receding gloom. Checking that you have all your belongings with you, the three of you head out of the camp. Scramble down the pathway. The white carving of an arrow just above visible in the light, and the dawn light flickering into the cavern, confirms the path forward. You wish it had not, because the narrow split in the rock face is barely wide enough for a single person to fit through. Even then, only if that person were to turn sideways. Alice relights her lantern and holds it up to the entrance. Judging by what little you can make out, the passage beyond is in no hurry to widen. But with no other options, you will have to resign yourself to squeeze through. Ayoko expels a long breath beside you. I'll go first, he says. Alice, follow with the lantern so I have some notion of what lies ahead. Adjusting the pouches on his belt, your colleague steps into the breach and begins to inch his way through. As the material from his robes start to disappear from sight, Alice turns herself to the side, hooks the lantern to her hip, and pushes her way after him. Taking a last look at the dripping stalactite formations of the cavern chamber, you suck in your chest and stomach and follow your colleagues. Feeling the tight rock wall scrape against your back and shoulders as you inch your way into the gap. You're thankful for whatever accident of nature left a wider space at head height. Still, too narrow to allow you to turn your head with any ease, but broad enough for your mask to pass through without getting snared. Closing your eyes, you continue to shuffle onward, trying to concentrate on anything else besides the sensation of all the fluids in your body being wrung out between two unyielding walls. I think about how many are depending on me. I think about the other adversities I've overcome. Think about happy moments and places. I just keep breathing. One of these. I think this. I think about how many are depending on me, but I'd probably be thinking of both, but that would probably be more of the important one in my head. For the sake of those relying upon your skills, you must continue. You focus on the faces you can recall from the sanctuary infirmary, imagining them urging you onward. To your relief, Ioka gives the call up ahead. The way widens up once again, leaving enough room to stand and move with relative freedom. You pull yourself out of the tight rift to find Alice lamenting a torn pouch. Must have got caught in something, she says, trying to salvage what few herbs remain inside the ruined container. Follow the passageway. You press on tighter. You press on together, traveling only a short distance before the passageways diverges in two. The leftward path is marked with a familiar white symbol of the smugglers, while the right appears to slope and curve upward. Seems clear which way we should proceed, Ayoko says with a shrug. Let's get. Hold on, Alice says, silencing him and stepping closer to the rightward entrance. She raises the lantern and peers inside. Do you hear that? She asks. You tilt your head closer, hearing nothing at first, then a faint distant pulse. Rhythmic and steady. A heartbeat beneath Thornback Hollow. Is that drumming? You say, not quite willing to believe what your ears are telling you. Whatever it is, Ayoko says, our route is clear. We follow the markings. If there are people down here, it could be prudent to investigate, says Alice, though her voice betrays a nervousness as to what that may entail. We'll have to return this way, Ayoko replies. If you're still eager to go chasing strange sounds, that may be the time. For now, we should keep tracing the steps of those we know to have broken quarantine. He's right. We should follow the marked trail. Yes. Perhaps these markings are misleading. We should follow the noise. That sound bodes ill. We should stay left. If someone is there, they may have departed before we can return. Let's investigate now. I don't know. But what happened if something happened to the guys who were here trying to leave a trail for where they went? Alright. I'll stay with this one. Although I really want to see what the heck it is making that noise. I am sorry. I am just stumbling with my words for some reason. Okay. He's right. We should follow the marked trail. But using the symbols as a guide, you take the left-hand passage. As your footsteps carry you farther from the diverging tunnels, the rhythm fades, folded into the silence of the underground. You start to question whether you even heard it at all. Ayako is the first to notice the rats. Furry bodies scampering around the base of the tunnel wall, eyes shining black as they catch the light of the lantern. He points to another, hauling itself onto one of the narrower routes that pokes through the compacted earth and rock that surrounds you. It struggles for a time, back legs waggling until they find purchase, then scuttles along the length of the route, outpacing you in the darkness ahead. Bloody things would always get in our baggage wagons, ruin our grain supplies, he recalls. But if you're already out of food, a fat rat is like venison for a hungry soldier. That's what I love about your war stories, Alice says, calling back from her position at the head of the trio. The glamour. Nothing worthy of more glamour than scurrying a few plump rats for starving troops, he replies. You find it difficult to tell whether his pride is sincere. express my disgust at the prospect of eating rats. I ponder what the rodents would be eating in these tunnels. I ask Ioko whether he has ever eaten a rat. I think I would be wondering more of this. Wondering how the hell they're even surviving down here. But what would they be eating down here? You wonder aloud. Besides us, if that light goes out? Ioko replies, nodding in the direction of the lantern. Not sure. Unless crops can grow beneath the ground now. You walk on behind the others, listening for the chittering in the gloom. In the dim light, you see the passageway broadening. Looking up, you can no longer see the jagged surface above. You stretch your arms as high as it will go out, but touch only air with your fingers. The murk beneath the vanished ceiling still draws your eye as you almost collide with Ioko's back. Your colleagues have paused, their attention drawn by something farther down the passage. Step around to see. With the tunnel now wide enough to hold the three of you abreast, you stand with your colleagues, peering at the shapes and shadows outlined by the lantern's light. The cavern ahead is far smaller than the one in which you spent the night, reminding you in size of moderate dwelling. Where a far wall once existed, you can make out a vast section of roots. Its tubed form sweeping inside the chamber like a curled back of a great slumbering cat. As illumination passes along its length, you see a translucent green hue, exposing strange vessels beneath the surface. Blinking as your eyes strain against the dark, you could swear you see the exterior stretch and contract. You look again, and the roots is still. Largest one we've seen yet, Ioko says. You see him tilt his head upward as if in a futile effort to see through the earth above. Roots this size, we must be close to the sanctuary. Look there. You follow Alice's pointed finger as she holds the light steady in her other hand. The root is split, oozing a viscous liquid from a gouged crack that runs several feet across its horizontal strength. Thin ropes of the substance dangle from the wound. What? Presenting an organic tableau of cavern stalactites. A thick pool of the stuff has seeped halfway across the floor of the tunnel, where it sits stagnant and sap-like in texture. This time, you are the first to notice the rats. 3 small corpses lie close to the punctured root, their fur matted and dull. Whatever afflicted these rodents, you say, we should take care to uncover. The roots, Alice muses. If they are drawing water from the Thornback River, then whatever killed these rats could already have contaminated the wells, Ioko says. Silence. Glances exchanged between masked physicians in wordless recognition. This scene demands further study, even at the risk of contamination. I'm sorry, I'm stalling up on my words. I'll make closer and more detailed observations in order to reformulate a medical hypothesis. I think surgical cuts to the roots and rat carcasses will reveal more. Were truly beneath the sanctuary, this spot could be ideal for divine communion. Convince Alice she is best suited to investigate the scene. Convince Erica he has an I think Alice might be better for this. But for an awkward moment or two, nobody in your party makes a move. Alice, you say, gesturing toward the root. Among us all, you have the most extensive knowledge of medical theory. You'll catch elements that Ioko or I may miss. Is that right? She says, fox mask tilting as she cocks her head. Not that I disagree, but what will the two of you be doing while I take the risk? Keeping out of your way, you reply. The light may be dim, but you can tell us as well as I that there's space for only one of us to work unimpeded. Sensing her hesitation, you continue. If this proves to get us closer to the source of the walking death, there will be no doubts as to pioneering physician who made the discovery. Every medical tome will carry your name. She laughs, but there's little mirth behind it. Jack the Ripper, how long have we been working together now? Close to a week? You watch as she folds her arms. I am a little insulted that you believe flattery will work on me. That's not what you try to explain. Spare me the excuse. I know you feel I'm the best for this task. I already said I'm inclined to agree. No need to overbreak the bread. Noted. You say with a slight bow of your head. You can demonstrate your sincerity by dragging me out if I inhale some poisonous miasma, she replies. Without waiting for a retort, your colleague heads towards the oozing root. You watch from afar, Ayoko by your side. Alice's outline shifts and distorts with the illumination of her lantern. But you can just about make out her actions. You see her studying the fractured root at length, then watch as she produces some tools and appears to cut strips from the plant matter. May have something, she says, holding up her leather pouch as she returns to the two of you. Nothing definitive, but I didn't recognize the flowering, and that gave me pause. Flowering? Ayoko asks. A white lichen, I think. Alice replies. It was clinging to the edges of where the root was split. Did the same thing kill the rats? You ask. Can't say. No sign of that. But conditions aren't exactly ideal for study. Once we're finished here, we need to look into this lichen, Ayoko says, even if merely to dismiss it as a source. Good work, Alice, you add. Trudge onward. You depart by the only other passageway, leaving behind the vast curled root. It's your last glimpse of organic material for some time, as the walls and ceilings of the tunnel exhibit nothing of note, besides a periodic symbol from the smugglers who preceded you. While you walk, you try to determine your location relative to the streets of Thornback Hollow above. Using the root alcove as a point of reference for the sanctuary, you have to assume you are now heading west towards the cliffs. I've been mulling something over there, Alice says, breaking what had become a lengthy silence. We know the man we encountered on the sanctuary roof, Eustace, was involved in the smuggling operation. He walked this path, and he caught the walking death. But if smuggling people beneath the town only began after the outbreak, then the initial source cannot have been confined to these passageways. There's plenty to smuggle from Thornback Hollow besides people, Ayoko says. This town sits on the pathway to the ocean. I'd bet there are enough merchants trading enough goods for some to require more unofficial routes out of the town. To my eyes, their symbols and markings look far older than the start of the outbreak. So once again, there's not much we can deduce, she replies. Just that wealth sings a powerful tune. Your colleague's retort spurts another period of silence, punctuated only by the sound of exertion and the soles of boots against rock. As you begin to wonder how this tunnel can still persist without end, a gust of cold wind finds its way into the folds of your robe, causing you to shiver. The candle flame of Alice's lantern flickers and spins as if being pulled in different directions by invisible strings. Up ahead, you see the gray hue of winter daylight. See the sky once again. Huzzah! The landscape beneath you is obscured by a thick layer of snow. Flakes the size of leaves still fall from the sky, covering the oak forest with a heavy white veil. Even at the entrance of the cliffside cleft where you find yourself standing, A drift of several inches has blown in from the outside. In the distance, you think you can see splashes of color between the flurries, glimpses of the tents and banners of Baron Moreland's beleaguered camp. You glance down, looking at the precipitous. Hold on, sorry. Hold on, need to drink water. Oh, reading is stressful. Reading stresses me out. Public reading, at least. You glance down, looking at the precipitous stepped cliffs, slick with snow and ice, for any possible route of descent. With a rope, perhaps, but where then? Even if the snows were to abate and the traveler were savvy enough to avoid patrols, making it as far as nearby Micklewood would be an achievement of no small fortune. You look back at the woods in a grim calculation. How many more bodies of desperate escapees do their snow-laden canopies conceal? Down! Down! Ayoko's voice takes you by surprise, and you feel his hand on your shoulder, pushing you into a crouch. He points at something below you, at the foot of the cliffs, peeping out from your high perch in the rock face. You spot what has agitated your companion. In a small crevice somewhat isolated from the drifting snows, a pair of guards in the Baron's colors are keeping watch by the struggling fire. Appears we're not the only ones aware of these tunnels, Alice says, keeping her voice low out of habit, despite the whistling winds. I gave Baron the warning, you admit, back when he called me to the camp, and I learned of people fleeing the town. I felt it best to inform him. Alice nods. A responsible choice, she says. Unless we have need of this route ourselves, Ayoko adds, almost to himself. Satisfied that you have viewed all you can from your perch, you step back into the tunnel, preparing yourself for the substantial journey back to the old quarter entrance. Ugh, that's gonna be a long walk. Think the Baron can last the winter? Alice asks, gesturing in the general direction of the camp banners, before turning her attention to replacing the candle inside her lantern. He'll outlast us, Alco replies. If I have any measure of that man, he'll have his soldiers eating one another before he abandons the siege. He's a pompous bastard, but he's loyal to the crown. Failure would cost him any ambition. What about you, Jack the Ripper? You've spoken with him more recently than all of us. To betray the crown through desertion would be treason. The Baron would persist. I hope this snow buries with a lot of them. With our luck, he'll probably depart just as the last one of us keels over. I don't envy his position. The camp is suffering, and if the food is run, sorry, hold on. Gotta get back to my mind of clarity, so I can read with ease without delaying. Okay. I don't envy his position. The camp is suffering, and if the food runs out... Sympathy for those who would keep us imprisoned, eh? Ayoko says. Just compassion for those stuck in a situation as wretched as ours, you reply. Another gust of wind spirals along the passageway, ruffling the hems of your robes. The movements are weaker now, already fading as you get farther away from the crack to the outside world. You ready yourself for another few hours of walking through dim, silent caverns. Well, I know this much, Aoko says. I fought in her army for the best part of my youth, but that loyalty to the crown counted for nothing once I was out. Her? Alice asks. I thought the crown was a man. I have seen portraits at the university. He shakes his head. First general to command me kept saying he served a queen. I assumed he was a high enough rank to know, but... Ayoko's words fragment, turning to a bout of incredulous laughter. We can't even be sure who rules us. If that doesn't make a mockery of the whole thing. Always consider the crown to be a man myself. I also heard the crown is a woman. The crown has supreme rule. They need not concern themselves with trivial matters of gender. I've always thought the crown was more of a collective council. The ways people speak of them, they might. The way people speak of them, they may as well be a deity. Didn't look like a deity in the portraits I've seen, Alice says. Assuming such pictures were real, Hyoko adds. But the crown is flesh and blood, I am sure of that. He pauses for a moment. Yes, I am sure of that. I suppose we may never have an answer, you say, unless we're expecting a royal audience at the end of all this. Not likely, Hyoko scoffs. The conversation subsides once more, as the three of you follow the trail back to the cavern where you encountered the fractured root. Lantern light speckles its surface as you pass. You wonder whether the sample you gathered will yield any progress in your struggle against the plague. From the wounded root, it's a far shorter path back to the point where the passageway diverges. The right-hand passage sits quiet now. No sounds emanate from its gloomy interior. Alice holds her lantern up to the entrance. You see the candle sputter as it burns low. Our invisible musicians appear to have ceased for the performance. Their performance, Ayoko says. Should we still seek an encore? We may have no choice, Alice says, a note of concern in her tone. This candle is almost out, and only one more remains. It may not be enough to guide us back to the old quarter. The prospect of having to retrace any of your steps in pitch black darkness causes your heart to skip. Hell no. We heard signs of life down this way a mere hours ago, you say. That suggests another entrance to these caverns. If we're serious about covering all possible breaches of quarantine, we should investigate both. Either we find another source of light, or we find a closer exit. Let's hope, Ayoko says. The alternative goes unspoken. Follow the detour. Yeah, I don't want to fucking go all the way back there. Fuck that. The track begins as a gentle climb, but soon turns steeper. You find yourself clambering over the thick roots, protuberances with tenacity to burrow their way through solid rock. As you ascend still for... Why am I having so much issues right now reading? Oh, stop it. Stop it. Just read, please. As you ascend still further, the pathway appears to end, blocked by a slab of stone. By the remaining light of the candle, you discover that the barrier is more akin to a huge step, standing a little taller than a person. Using indents and extrusions as grips, you pull yourself up over the top, then turn to hold out your arms and assist the next climber. Beyond this obstacle, the ground begins to level off, and the passage ahead begins to take on a new character. Gone are the natural formations of rock, replaced by archways and stonework of human construction, one fading into the other in an almost seamless transition. Your spirits rise as you see a familiar glow filling the entrance ahead, just as the penultimate candle in Alice's lantern sputters and goes cold. Stepping through this lit archway, you find the passageway open out onto a narrow stone balcony. What? A pair of steps lead down on either side, wrapping around the edges of a circular arena, with more arches leading off in all directions. Lit torches cast a warm light over an otherwise simple chamber. In the center of the arena, lying supine on the dirt floor, you see a dozen figures, each dressed in tattered robes, caked in earthen soils and crudely decorated with sprigs and flora. Beyond, you see a small altar in front of a plated moss of roots. Are they? Alice starts to say, only for the words to catch. She points to another figure, robed and hooded, emerging from the shadows of the altar. "Who are you?" a voice calls out. "And why do you disturb the slumber of the dweller's children?" Approach the figure. You descend the steps to the center of the chamber, taking care to step around those in repose. As you pass by a woman with a gnarled vine wrapped around her left arm, you see her eyes twitching beneath the closed lids. Others in your path share the same state. Everybody here, save for the robed figure who beckons you down, appears fast asleep. "I ask again," the figure says, their hand around the stem of a wooden chalice resting on the altar. "Why do you intrude upon this ritual?" Now that you are closer, you see a crown of pale flowers resting upon their hooded head. Their robes are dappled with thorns. Something about their voice rings familiar in your ears. Their posture has changed. They are no longer the cowed and feeble youth you met in the manor, but the tone is unmistakable. "I believe we are owed some answers of our own," you say. "Aylwin Blake." "I have another name now," he replies, removing the crown of flowers and pulling back his hood. Zeal engorges his wide eyes. "The Dweller has called me. I am the Redeemer." I don't have time for this nonsense. This boy needs discipline. This conversation requires care. I'll engage with him on his own terms. The medical state of these cultists deserve further scrutiny. I have a yearning to partake in this ritual. This conversation requires care. I'll engage with him on his own terms. Ba-doop. "Very well, Redeemer," you say, placing emphasis upon his new title. "We mean no intrusion. Our business down here concerns the spread of the plague, and we would welcome your insight in answering our questions." "The children of the Dweller are free of the walking death," he replies, "as you can plainly see. So it would appear. But there are other matters you may be able to address." Aylwin frowns. "You use words like rope to bind and constrain," he says. "Mother's tutors would try to do the same. I will not submit to your trickery." Without warning, he tries to dash toward the nearest archway, but Ioko is well positioned to block his path and brings the struggling body back to your group. A flailing arm sends the wooden chalice thudding to the dirt floor, its contents seeping away into the earth. "All right," Iolin says, his energy expended. "Ask your questions." Satisfied that the boy is ready to cooperate, you ask Ioko to release him. "Elwin? Wait a minute. Elwin. Library Elwin? Is that Library Elwin? I don't know. No, it can't be. The sage and dweller share a lineage. I presume you also uncovered this knowledge. Neither your mother nor crown would approve of this. Oh, so it is. You would conduct secret rituals to a harmful deity? Explain this blasphemy. I'm worried about you, Ellen. What have you gotten yourself into? It was you that morning on the mayor's lawn. You cut me, you little bastard. I think I'll probably say something along these lines. I'm worried about you, Aylin. What have you gotten yourself into? Something beautiful, he says, with a smile you find a little uncanny. The dweller has called me, and I was ready to serve. What about your family? You ask. You are heir to the Blake name. The smile leaves the boy's face. His expression dims, receding into a frown. Not a fate I wish to embrace. Do you know what it is like to be groomed and chastened every day of your life? All for a role you have come to despise? You confess that you do not. When the dweller's voice arose in my dream, I felt purpose. Elwyn touches his robes, feeling the fabric. When I wear this garment and guide the dweller's children in ritual, I feel whole. I'm glad, you say, your doubts betrayed by your hesitation. You sound unsure. I, you begin to say, considering your words with care. Just be careful. The dweller will guide me, just as their voice guided me below the mayoral crypt to this place. These passageways lead back to the manor? You ask. Who knows about this? Myself, my sect, perhaps others through whom the dweller wishes to act. The mayor? He laughs. No, Mother is quite ignorant of the history beneath her feet. Could any of your sect be using the tunnels to smuggle people out of Thornback Hollow? Elwyn looks shocked. We would never aid the spread of this plague. The walking death starves us of dreams. It hurts citizens and dwellers alike. Continue your questioning. You've evaded something of great import, Alice says. What exactly is this ritual your sect performs? Elwyn closes his eyes, taking the time to compose his next reply. When he speaks, his tone is soft and cordial. We are in the midst of the feeding of the maw. It begins with a brief abstinence from sleep, to ensure that those participating will be tired when the time comes. He nods towards the roots and pair of discarded chunks of wood. The rhythm of the roots ensure that all stay awake. So that's the drumming sound we heard, Alco mumbles to himself. When the time is right, all save one consume the elixir, and they offer their dreams as sustenance, Elwyn continues. It fell to me to keep watch over those who slumber. Offer their dreams, you ask, to the Dweller of Thorns? He nods. That is correct. The Dweller is nourished by our dreams, and in turn directs their divine energy to the soil, to the oaken forests, to the land we work and cultivate. That sounds like the Sage of Oak, he says. Elwyn opens. You have been misled, he says, by a false deity and their lying thralls. It is the Dweller of Thorns who keeps the oak trees standing tall, who bring life to this land and to its town. His brow forms a frown. The Dweller has grown thin, robbed of their nightly offerings by this walking death. And how do you know all this? Alice says. I read, he replies. I listen when a deity calls. This feeding of the maw, you say, is it enough to keep your deity content? Elwyn shakes his head. The children of the Dweller are few in number. They are the destitute and abandoned, eager for purpose but fearful, as you may have seen. Even with our dreams made vivid by the elixir, the Dweller hungers still. While they suffer, so too will Thornback Hollow wither away. Alice takes you aside, keeping her voice low. Jack the Ripper, do you believe a single word of this? I believe in the power of the deities. There may be truth to this. I certainly think he believes that there's value in respecting that. It's nonsense explained either by a weakened mind or... Well, I certainly think that he believes it. There's value in respecting that. She nods. A responsible approach. We may yet need his cooperation. Eowyn clears his throat, interrupting your deliberations. You have observed our ritual and asked your questions of me. You can now see that we have played no part in spreading the walking death. Is your investigation into our conduct complete? What do you think, Jack the Ripper? Hyoko asks. I can't see any indication that these people have broken the town quarantine. Perhaps, you say, though I can't say the secrecy gives me much comfort. We shouldn't take actions based on mere suspicion, Alice says. She turns to Elwyn. Though do not assume this means we condone your activities. He nods in response. There is something else, you say. Our supply of candles has run low. We will require more in order to depart these caverns. You look toward the archways. Unless you can escort us out another way. Elwin shakes his head. I'd gladly allow you to leave through the manor crypt, but my mother has the whole area under close watch. You'd never make it back to the rest of the town. Regrettable, you say. The boy retrieves a pair of torches from their positions along the chamber wall and hands one to each of your companions. Here, he says. There should be enough kindling to see you back to the surface. Bidding him farewell, you head towards the steps leading back to the chamber balcony. Time to leave. Together, you make the slow descent back to the point where the trail diverged. Your newly acquired torches light the way. A deity who consumes dreams, Alice says, toying with the words. Fanciful or not, I hope we did the right thing allowing that group to continue their worship. We're isolated down here, Iolka reminds her. I'm not sure we had grounds to act in any other way. They appear to have committed no medical infractions, and even if they had, our authority alone would not have been enough to make them stop. You colleague? Typo. Another typo. That was the second typo I found in this one. Your colleague takes a few more steps. Head down. To head down? I don't know. Besides, he adds, his voice lower, we're not all so attached to our dreams. Elwin's involvement is no secret now, you say. Sorry. We can take further steps if we deem them necessary, but for now, we should return to the surface as soon as possible. Return to the smuggler camp. You shimmy and squeeze your way back through the narrow opening into the cavern where you made temporary camp. On the return journey, knowing what lies beyond, this claustrophobic corridor holds far less trepidation. Ahead, you see the covered alcove and the remains of your brief stay. In the distance, you hear the familiar sounds of the babbling stream. Though your legs cry out for rest, the three of you agree to press on. The desire among all of you to once again see the outside world passes unspoken. As you cross the stream's flowing waters and leave the largest of the underground caverns behind, Iolko hands you a lumpen chunk of salted meat. Thanks, you say, holding it up in the light. Illumination does nothing to improve its texture or appearance. The morsel remains gray and unappetizing. Been in my pack for a while, Iolko replies, his voice muffled as his teeth tug at an unhappy slab of his own. Best I can offer. Aw. Your hunger does not permit you to be picky, and you make the sad, savory piece of flesh last through the chamber of sarcophagi. Sorry. The salt is still on your lips as the three of you form a tired, slow trio, working your way back up the steps to the old quarter entrance. You have no idea how long you've spent beneath the town, but as Iolko shouts that he sees the trap door to the outside, you realize it has felt like an age. Oh yeah. Alice stands in the winter breeze, stretching her arms to the sky as snow falls upon the whiskers of her fox mask. You feel Iolko's hand slap you on the shoulder as you both take a deep breath of air. Both take deep breaths of air. The alleyways of the old quarter have never smelled like such relief. A few hours of trudging through white drifts puts you back in sight of the sanctuary. You look up the branches of the ancient oak towers, their angular points raised and bare, as if beckoning the snow down upon them. I've seen the heart of you, you think to yourself. I've touched the tubes and vessels that bind you to this earth. Lucia's voice carries across the street, rousing you from your fixation. Delighted to see you're still alive, they call, holding a feathered hat to their heads as they hurry over. You need to accompany me to the rabbit warrens. Now. Their eyes flare with urgency. God damn it. Hey. And so ends chapter 8. Man, that was a fucking weird-ass chapter right there. There's just a bunch of mystery. I almost fucking fell in love accidentally. I'm not trying to get in a relationship with no one. I'm not trying to even look for no freaking hanky-panky or none of that. I'm just trying to cure a disease. That's all I'm here for. But with that being said, that is the end of the stream. I hope you enjoyed if you were watching, which I don't really feel anyone was. But thank you all for watching anyway. Everyone in post that I'm speaking to. I don't know if anyone's watching right now. Anyway, later.